Okay, I'm Chad. Aha Labs, Fifo. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Fifo, also a Halebs now.
Yes. All right. First day with Aha Labs. Welcome, Fifo. Good to have you. We've already been working together, but it's we're working even closer now. So we are working on Scaffold Stellar. This video is going to mostly focus on the front end piece of Scaffold Stellar, but we can start with a little context. How do you want to frame this? What do you want to know? Where should we start?
Good point. So let's take a step back and let me understand what is the objective you're trying to achieve with Scaffold? Like what is going to try and accomplish for the developers that are going to use it?
Yeah. Um, the goal, so different people who are different stakeholders have slightly different goals. It's very similar goals. Basically, it's hard to get started building on Stellar. That's the biggest problem that this is trying to solve. So this will be the front door of the developer experience for building smart contracts and then wiring it the whole way through to integrating it with the front end. And by the way, also not necessarily building smart contracts, right? Like I also want to, in my vision of how all of this stuff works, you should be able to build on other people's smart contracts as easily as you build on your own. So that is also a goal that I have for Scaffold Stellar. And sort
Is
of
it
the
fair to
difference.
assume that it should cover everything from the start of the project up until the final UI experience and integration with wallets?
Yeah, that's kind of, it's like, for now, it's going to start as sort of almost a boilerplate with a little bit more tooling to allow it to be more powerful than that. There are already boilerplates. What makes this one different is that there's like a nice CLI for piping. You like specify your smart contracts deterministically in like a config file, environments.toml it's called. And then those can be local smart contracts, or they can be like in your project that you're working on, or they can be contracts that are already deployed on a live network, mainnet or testnet. And it'll copy them into the local network if you're working in the local network. Or if you're working on testnet, it can just be someone else's contracts, but then it pipes wherever they're coming from. You like end up with your NPM libraries and some starting code. Eventually it would be awesome to do some like front end UI code generation. React probably, right? So this already gets into like, which front end technology do we use for helping people build apps in 2025? Which to me is a very big question. But that's sort of right. I said different stakeholders have different ideas, and the different ideas are sort of, is this closer to Scaffold ETH, which is a learning tool, or is this closer to something like Ruby on Rails, which is a framework for building certain kinds of apps in Web 2, right? If you're doing something that's close to Basecamp in Web 2, an app that just does CRUD, create, read, update, destroy, then Ruby on Rails is a good choice and makes some sensible choices about how you are going to build that app. I also worked at a consultancy that liked Ruby but did not like Ruby on Rails. So I understand that like Ruby on Rails is controversial, but what I would like to aim for with Scaffold Stellar is something closer to that, where it works for like 80% of cases and is a reasonable starting point. And if you're going to do something else, it's still sort of defining what is the standard way of building apps in this ecosystem, in this paradigm, right? So like, how do people build decentralized apps on Stellar? What are the components that they need? Scaffold Stellar has a chance to define sort of that baseline.
Awesome. And what would be like the initial step or the first step for the developers working on this? Like if I'm starting from scratch, how would they start a project with Scaffold?
It's like one command on your CLI kind of thing, right? Like the focus is building apps locally. I don't personally enjoy using things where you're building stuff in a browser. It doesn't feel real until it's running on my local machine, right? Like I want it to be for actually like, you're ready to get started building stuff on your local machine. You are a developer who intends to feel productive in this environment. You're not just exploring it as a toy, right? You're like, you've got some ambition and you're ready to run stuff locally. So it's going to be a CLI command, run it locally on your machine. Ideally, it's one command. That's a little bit tricky because it's almost always like install. It's like get the CLI tool you need and then initialize a project, that kind of thing. Or like download, clone the starter repository, and then install the dependencies, right? So it's like an install and then start usually is going to be the steps, but one or two CLI commands is sort of the how it should start. And then you're running an app and you can open it up and like see it in your browser and start playing with things, and it'll sort of walk you through like, try changing stuff in this file and see what happens, kind of thing.
Got it.
To sort of quickly get you making connections with like, when I change my smart contract, I see the change reflected the whole way through the stack, and I see it in my front end, kind of thing.
Got it. And it's more like a config as you go. You don't need to like start by doing like a lot of configuration. You just
exactly
project,
convention over configuration, like Ruby on Rails. So it's like sensible starting points. Ideally, you can configure them and like adapt it to your own project's needs as you go. So the goal is to like, yeah, sensible starting point, but also not locked in to a specific paradigm. So let's go to front end. We're like 6 minutes into this conversation. Yeah. Let's talk about, so all of that should inform like, how do we build front ends in 2025? And specifically, what do we use for Scaffold Stellar's front end? Because we want the whole pipeline. We want the whole developer journey, the whole app arc, if you will, smart contracts to front end. So I guess I'm curious, like, what would you pick as the front end for if you are making a new Stellar app? What do you pick as your front end?
Yeah, normally I would go with TypeScript React. I think it's my comfort zone. So maybe because I have been trying those so far, I would usually go with the Stellar Plus because that's the library that I worked in the past. So I'm very familiar with that. But initially, I use a lot of the TypeScript bindings that would just create the client, and from the client on, I would start playing around with that. I would build some sort of custom hooks for the contract that I'm working with. And I'm curious to see, like, the plan of the Scaffold is for you to have an option similar to how the bindings were generated, so that you have your contract and you can right out of the bat get a client that is ready to use, or front end, like front end oriented components that you can simply integrate in your application. Is it in this direction?
Yes. Yeah. So the NPM libraries for each smart contract, that's part of the core workflow, right? Like I said, that there's this environments.toml file where you specify which contracts you are using, and it'll automatically take your smart contracts, build them, deploy them to your local network, generate bindings for them, and then import the bindings into your front end code so you're ready to import and use it. And then it'll also have an example of some, for now, the starting point is that it'll have an example of some front end code, app code that uses those bindings, but it's not going to generate that front end code for you yet, because that's a ton of work, right? Like that's not where we start.
So quick question: is it possible, like, to generate these for contracts on the testnet to get an existing contract? Okay, got it.
Yes, exactly. And it's not yet possible to say, like, in my local environment, I want to like spoon data from testnet into my local environment. We are like figuring out how to do that, because that would be awesome, right? Or like even mainnet, right? I want to use Eurocoin from mainnet at this block height. Just like get my local environment to that starting point and let me use Eurocoin locally. That would be so cool. We want to do that. And like locally should be easier. There might be more tricks that we can do than doing that in testnet, right? Like copying Eurocoin into testnet at a certain block height. That seems more complicated. So anyway, going back to, you said React, TypeScript, we're fully on board with this. If you go to the like developer survey, the JavaScript developer survey that's done every year, React is by far the leader of front end technology. So we wrote up a little document that I will share It'll be in the show notes below for everyone watching. But we wrote up a little document that's like, which front end should we use? And broadly popular is one of our like most like that. We're really keying on that, right? Like we really want something that is broadly popular, so that if you're using this, you're sort of familiar with what's going on. So React, just like, sorry to everyone who loves Vue and Svelte. Maybe someday Vue and Svelte will displace React, but right now React is the reigning champion of front-end UI libraries. But you didn't say how you would do React, right? Like React is actually underspecified. You've still got a choice of like, do I use a meta framework like Next.js or Astro? Do I skip the meta framework and potentially write my own using something like Vite? So this was something else that we looked at. And by the way, if you're looking for broadly popular, these meta frameworks like Next.js and Astro, none of them are nearly as popular as React, right? Like React has been used by 80+% of the front end community. It's well liked. People feel good about it. Next is the most used meta framework, but it's like declining and declining in popularity. People are leaving it. Its retention scores are bad, and its positivity scores are worse. People don't like Next.js anymore. And Astro just hasn't been used that much. It's still sort of rising in popularity, but it's 24% of people have used it or something like that who have taken the State of JavaScript survey. So those are really bad metrics for those two. And then we also thought about, there's a project from Palta Labs in the Stellar community called Create Sorbonne DApp. It uses Next.js, and we kind of wanted to like use that if we felt like it was a pretty good starting point for most apps. But given the lack of popularity for Next, we were hesitant about that. So our answer to the question, to like skip to the end because this video is too long now, if we just go with Vite, right? Like Vite is broadly popular and it's very customizable. You can upgrade Vite. You can switch Vite to be a Next project if you like Next. You can switch Vite to be an Astro project even more easily. Astro is built with Vite. People love Vite. Its positivity scores, its retention scores, and its usage scores are all like super high. So Vite just seems like the obvious choice there. It's, if you're just looking at those sorts of metrics, it's like Vite and React are reigning champions right now. And then at the level of like PNPM or Yarn or NPM, Deno, Bun, right? Like these actually, those are other, that's another axis, Deno or Bun or Node.
Do you have a preference?
Again, it's going by like broadly popular. It's got to be Node and it's got to be NPM. These are easy to customize. So like if you install Scaffold Stellar and you want to switch to PNPM, please do. That sounds like a great choice, but we're not going to ship it with that. We're not going to recommend it. And we're not necessarily going to test it with PNPM, right? So like that's an unsupported option at this point, but it should be straightforward to customize it with that. So that's what we're thinking for front-end tooling. Again, we've got the document below. Would love to see people's comments in there, but Fifo, any other questions or comments on that?
Yeah, and being someone that is also getting context right now and getting up to speed, like if someone wants to get involved, share feedback, follow up with everything that is happening, where they can find more information?
That's a good question. I would say in our GitHub repos right now. And then we're also all in the Stellar Discord, so reach out there. We'll try to, we'll make sure we all have the like AHA Labs things in our usernames. So hopefully you can search us by that. If not, we'll be in there. GitHub orgs are also linked below. GitHub.com/AHA Labs/Scaffold Stellar is a good starting point. There's also Scaffold Stellar frontend for now, might be incorporated into the mono repo later. Yeah, those are good spots. Maybe by the time we have this video posted, an early alpha release will also be ready to use. So go ahead and check out the GitHub and see if it's ready to try. Check out this YouTube channel, wherever this is going to be posted, wherever this is, and see if there is another like how to get started video.
Yeah, excited for those.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.
Awesome.